upcoming painting.
There's a couple of interesting things going on with this painting. First of all is the surface. I painted on this kind of surface before, but not for a little while. It's a kind of paper which I think is called stone paper. And this particular brand is Yupo. It's a kind of plasticky paper. It's pretty thin, at least this stuff is. I think you can get it thicker. And very smooth, and is very non-absorbent. In fact, I would go as far as to say it was like painting on glass. So the first time I painted on this surface, I really hated it. It was too slippy, it was too much. Sort of like trying to walk across a frozen lake or something. I couldn't get an anchor point, couldn't really get a foothold. So I felt like I just was not making any progress. But after a while of using it, I started to realise if you just keep painting, the paint does eventually tack up and you can get a bit more purchase and things do begin to anchor themselves. You just have to work through that slippy stage. But after a while I started to really enjoy that the paint just kind of sits there waiting to be sculpted afterwards. You know, like I said before, I'm much more that kind of painter. I'd rather get some paint down and sort of push it and pull it around, sculpt it until I find the right shapes. That's partly a desperation to get going, and also partly not really knowing what I want to do before I do it. The whole thing is a kind of discovery. The other major thing going on in this painting that's a bit different is I'm using a new pigment, Indian yellow, a transparent, bossy, yellowy orange that gives a lot of warmth and heat to mixes and can kind of dominate. So at first it was a bit of a shock to me because I'm kind of a mucky painter. So it was a bit of a shock to me to have all this chroma, but once I got into the painting I really started to like it. So it could be that I try and introduce Indian yellow a little bit more into my general palette. Because, you know, I've never quite found my perfect yellow. You know, the transparent oxide yellow I've mentioned before is pretty good, but again it's pretty peely-wally, by which I mean weak. So I feel like I go through absolute tons of it. And also if you want it to be punchy, a big punchy yellow, it's not really for that. It's a kind of mucky yellow. I've got this Yemen yellow. I've got this lemon yellow that I've been trying out. It's okay, but I think I'm not using it properly either. Cadmium I'm trying to remove, so I don't know. I've never quite found my right yellow. But this Indian yellow is interesting. I think it's a possible, but it does shift everything. I mean, in this painting it is the primary pigment. I'm hanging everything else around that. But it did feel like everything else I touched was heavily impacted by this yellow. So it's only round about kind of now in the painting where I'm starting to feel like, okay, I can get some control back. Something about just kind of doing some blending to create more of a sense of solidity in some of the forms, particularly the portrait, you know, the bodies, and then getting some of the anchors in of these darker patches of the shadow on the left and the hair. And like I said before, that's kind of possible now just because the paint has started to tack up. I think just a mixture being worked and just the time sitting on the paper. I'm using a little bit of liquid, by the way, which might speed things up too. And after that, I was really just kind of sculpting away, stuck a podcast on, and I just kind of zoned out and trying to keep going till it sort of felt good. I probably should have used a bigger brush. But weirdly, I find myself doing this more and more. Using these tiny wee brushes is a bad habit. This is another scene from film, but I have to admit I've never seen this film. It's the film's called Love. It's a Gaspar Noé film, so I'm sure it is, you know, intense. But you know, I've never seen it. You know, I follow a bunch of accounts that share, you know, just like compelling screenshots from films. And I just saw it there, and I thought it would be good for the Indian yellow. I've been kind of looking for something to lend itself to this, and the color palette worked. And since I posted it, a few people said it's a really good film, so maybe I will watch it. Working at this scale is quite interesting too. You know, it's a bit smaller than normal, and I sort of strangely find it more comfortable. It's easier to be a bit looser, to kind of just put little blobs in until it feels right. And that's how I want to paint. I know logically there's no reason why I can't do that at a bigger scale. It's just a bigger brush, a bigger canvas, and I stand slightly further away. There shouldn't be any real difference. I should be able to scale it up. But for some reason I just tighten up in these situations. The other thing I think that does it is that I spend much longer on these big paintings. Really because I feel like I have to. Like, it's a big painting, I should spend longer. It's probably not true. Because this painting here, you know, it's only a few hours, maybe 2 hours. A few weeks ago I posted a full length unedited painting. It was about 4 hours. And I thought that, you know, nobody would really watch that. But I did get a few nice comments saying that they liked that super long format, that absolute transparency of everything. So I think I might do that more often. So I'll post the whole of this one maybe next week. But the big interesting thing about this painting is, you know, the question of how much variety of colour do you really need? You know, in order to make a sense of warmth, do I have to put something cool in there too? I think I was somehow of the mindset that I did, that everything always had to be contrasting. But I kind of like this way this came out. I like that it's kind of soaking in that heat, that love heat. So I'm kind of pleased with it. I thought it was amazing how much better this painting looked after I trimmed it. I suppose not too surprising, you know, the scene is kind of composed for that format, and having those white borders does kind of kill it. But yeah, it looked great. I didn't take any footage of that though, except from this little bit of varnishing it at the start. And the painting sold, so it's gone. But I liked it. It was good fun. I really liked using this new pigment, and I like the painting. You know, this moment that's being depicted. I think most of us have experience of moments like this. And it's a great moment to capture in a painting, I think, because by its very nature it's fleeting. You know, lying around in the morning, the sun in the window. Great. But thanks for watching. I'll post the full length one shortly. And yeah, I'll see you next time.